Hi, I'm Paul from Trending Who, What, Where, and When. Today, I will be speaking with the Amazon best-selling author Michael Browne about his book, Pinot Rocks, A Winding Journey Through Intense Elegance. Michael will be joining us from Windsor, California, USA.
It depends on the friends and family and what their style is, and what they're kind of looking for. So some friends will go have lunch at a really cool place. Other friends, we might have dinner somewhere cool with one of our chef friends.
Okay.
And other people, it's like, hey, come to the winery and let's hang out for a while, and all these different things. Food, family, friends, wine, music, it leads to conversation. And that's what I really enjoy. And so the question was, where do you bring friends and family? Well, I try to bring friends and family to a place that we can explore conversation.
I love reading Pinot Rocks, A Winding Journey Through Intense Elegance. Your inspirational story of building a successful wine producing business from the ground up. The American dream is set in Sonoma County, California, and focused on production and sales of top quality Pinot Noir. It was very fascinating to read of the continued complications and remedies you experienced in your winding journey through intense elegance.
A word you just used, which was really a good one, which I haven't thought about for some time, but remedies is something that we can translate into many parts of our lives.
Mhm.
What is a remedy to something? And how do we proceed and what we all do day to day to have happiness and what's the remedy for that? And so, cool word. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to ponder that one. Yeah.
You seem like you're successful at continuously fixing things that went a little bit off course and getting it back to where it should be for your desired end.
It's a continuous journey.
Yeah.
And an evolution for sure. And am I there yet? No, I'll never be there, but you got to wander the path, man. You don't want to go down the path that has all the thorny bushes. You want to go down the path that has spring meadows and a nice river, but there might be a grizzly bear out there.
What inspired you to become a writer and write Pinot Noir?
That's an interesting question. I get that quite a bit. And in the past, I used to sit down with James Lowby from the Wine Spectator a couple times a year, and we'd go have lunch, and I'd drop off wines for reviews, and we'd go have lunch, and we would talk about everything except for wine. And I really appreciated that. It was so cool. We'd talk about fishing and family and whatever, and it was he's such a wonderful guy. And he said, Michael, you got to write your story down. And I go, I don't know how to write a story. And he's a writer, right? He goes, no, it's simple. You sit down there and you just, you dictate it and you start typing. And I go, yeah, I don't know how to do that. And then I did a talk, and I like to do talks and things like that. And I was invited to this one talk over in Napa, and it was with Google executives and Apple people and things like that. And there were I don't know, 8 or 10 different speakers, and I was the last one. And one of the guys, his name is Tucker Max. He's the founder of a book company called Scribe Media. And I'm sitting back, and they mic me up, and then I'm getting ready to sit up there and do my little talk because they wanted a wine guy to finish this thing out because they're in Napa. And mainly it was business oriented. And my face comes up and Kosta Browne comes up, and this guy, Tucker Max, goes, oh, I love that wine. That's cool. He looks at me, he goes, that's you. I go, yeah. He goes, you got to write a book. I go, how do you do that, man? He goes, I got 100 writers on my team, but I'm going to do this personally with you. And it took 4.5 years because I'm really bad at homework,
Oh,
It could have taken a year, but I'm just really bad at homework. And finally he goes, Michael, and I'm scrubbing every word in that book, scrubbing every word, wordsmithing. And he goes, Michael, leave it alone. It's good. Send it out. And finally I go, hands up in the air, send it out, and that's kind of how that whole thing came around. But Tucker Max and his book company and the people I've worked with within his company have been very instrumental in the success of this thing. And it's not a huge success. It's just like putting it out there, and it's a story. And they helped me craft the story in a way that perhaps has understanding with some people.
but tell us about your book, Pinot Rocks.
It was organic in approach, and it started out with my childhood, which I didn't really want to put out there because it was personal. But I was persuaded to do so. And then it got into my circus days. Then I got into my restaurant days. Then I got into why I went into the wine business. And then my goal was to proceed into an aspect of the American dream. Going, if you have the desire and the willingness and the fortitude and whatever else, whatever words you want to put to it, you can do whatever you want in the world, whatever it is. You can do it, And I didn't think I could do it. And I'm still working on it. I'm not saying I've done it, but I've had some success. And that is, starting with $800 to start Kosta Browne and building that thing up, and then to battle through trying to get CIRQ and all this other stuff going. It's doable. And that's kind of where it winds up, and it was meant to be a wind up with that sort of a authentic and genuine aspect of, if you want to do it, you can do it. And we're in the land of the promise, right? The promised land. And don't give up on yourself. And just, if you get stumbles, if you have hurdles, roadblocks, you go through it. And I'll tell you a quick story here because it just hit my mind. When I used to go through really tough times, I would lay in bed at night and I would envision myself as a rhinoceros, not a costume, but as an actual rhinoceros, because a rhinoceros, they're 4,000 pounds, man, and they can go through any wall. And right now I've got like a bunch of rhinoceros all over the winery, and it's a really powerful thing. And I told this one guy this story. He's a brewer up in Eugene, Oregon, and really wonderful guy. And I told him this story, and now every year they put out the Rhino Suit beer.
Oh, really?
Based on that story. And I go, really? That's kind of cool. I was just telling you a stupid story about how I think about things. But in entrepreneurship and in business, it's not easy. And you have to find some sort of armor to get through the day-to-day. And then you have to, be kind to your family or your friends and all those other things that are the peaceful aspects of life. And but the rhino suit, man, you got to put it on every once in a while.
You've had so many interesting circumstances in your career. Finding wine, working at restaurants, John Ashen Company, Santa Rosa. It sounds like you started out there in your career.
Started when I was 13 years old in a Chinese restaurant. Then I got promoted to the onion cutter, and I'd cry all day long. You know how that goes. When you cut, and all the older guys in the kitchen would just be laughing at me. I'm going, I'm laughing at you all the way to the bank, man. I'm making $3.35 an hour. And then I got a job at this restaurant called Thunderbird. It's now the Red Lion. I lied on my application on my age because I wanted to be a captain. And the captains did flambés, you know, steak Diane, scampi, cherries Jubilee, things like that, right? And I was 16 years old at the time. And the manager said, I'll make this pass. I know you're 16, making steak Diane for people. I'm like, how does that happen? And then I came to Santa Rosa and I worked at this restaurant called Equus at the Fountain Grove Inn. And it's since burnt down. I spent 5 years there doing flambés and the whole 9 yards. And I got plenty of stories about that, which I won't get into, but you know, I burned myself a couple times, you know, doing flambés and things like that. And then I went to John Ash and Company. This is some real food. And John Ash would come in every once in a while and I would corner him. The man, John Ash, beautiful person, wonderful guy. And I said, John, I've got an idea about making pasta with the foie gras based sauce. Okay, Michael, here's how you're going to do it. He would pull me aside and he would tell me all these things and he'd bring in his beautiful mushrooms and all this cool stuff. And I go, okay, I'm onto something here, right? There's something that I can learn from somebody. And John Ash, again, he's a wonderful guy, and I love talking with him whenever I can. And then I did every job you could imagine at John Ash. I was a bartender, a waiter, a manager, a sommelier. I went to the kitchen and I said, you know, I want to be a chef. And they go, start doing salads at lunch. I said, got it. $7.50 an hour, right? And then they said, Michael, do you want to work the grill at night? Yes, please. I don't know how to grill, but I learned it. And then I was the lead grill cook at John Ash after a month or two. And then about 6 months later, they said, Michael, do you want to be the pastry chef? I said, yes, please. I didn't know how to make a pastry or make chocolate, but I had a coach, you know, and I did that for a few months and it was really cool. And that kind of goes back to my days in the circus when I didn't know how to do anything in the circus. I mean, that was a total mind trip, but I practiced. I tried to do it. I got in the unicycle team and I said, well, I got on that team. I want to be a fire eater. Got on that team. Coaches. I had coaches, right? And then I said, there's no way I can ever be on the high wire. That's 25 feet in the air, man. And you got to balance and all these things. And I said, there's no way. Well, the next thing I know, I'm riding a bicycle on the high wire, 25 feet in the air in front of 1,000 people. And I said, well, I can never be on the trapeze because I'm not an acrobat. And they asked me one day, they said, Michael, do you want to be the catcher on the flying trapeze? And I said, yes. It scared the hell out of me, right? You're hanging upside down, swinging, catching people in the middle of the air. And I did that. Man, I used to pop things out of girls' mouths with a bullwhip and all kinds of different things, man. And, but what it taught me was that if you practice, if you go for it, if you get the right coaches and you're open to failure, you're open to risk, and you can see something that might work, go for it. And when I hit the wine business, those are the traits. I'm bringing this up for this reason.
Yeah.
That's what I learned when I was in my adolescence. And I applied that to the wine business. I don't know how to wash a barrel. I don't know how to make wine. I don't know about how to prune a vineyard. None of that. But I'm going to give it my go. And it works, man. If you just give it up and you put it all on the line and you go, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I can shake a cocktail all day long and make 60 grand a year. I mean, I got that backup plan, you know. So anyway, I'm kind of going off on on a strip here, but
Well, actually, in a sense, that brings us up to your internship at Deerfield Ranch.
that was really cool. Yeah. When I came back and I was making beer at the time, homebrew. And I had one day when all my bottles blew up under my bed. Brought some beer up to him, and his son-in-law at that time was a manager at John Ash, and he said, "Oh, talk to my father-in-law." And I said, "Robert, I want to make wine." And he goes, "Okay, come on up." And so Robert and I would go out to the vineyard and pick a bunch of grapes, bring it back to this little tiny winery that he had at that point, and we'd crush this stuff. And I go, "Robert, I want you to check out my ale. You know, what do you think about the beer?" And he goes, "That's pretty good, but what do you think about making wine?" And I go, "I want to do that." And then a couple years later, I moved back to Washington State. And then I called him up and I said, "Robert, I want to make wine and I want to come work for you." And he goes, "I would love to have you here, but I can't pay you." And I go, "I don't care. I'm not into the paycheck. I want the experience." And so I worked for him for 8 years. Eventually made a paycheck, but he taught me a lot about the fundamentals of winemaking, and more importantly, the fundamentals about business and entrepreneurship. And Robert Rex is a Renaissance man. I mean, he does many things very well. And again, a wonderful person. And man, you spend a day with Robert, you're going to learn something, right? And so I did that. And in the meantime, we started Kosta Browne and we did all those things. And I was working in the restaurant at nights, working Deerfield in the day, working weekends, trying to figure out how we're not going to screw up Kosta Browne. And, you know, all those things in between. But Deerfield Ranch, and especially Robert Rex up there, he taught me so much about life, winemaking, and entrepreneurship. And that just happened to be. I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened, but I'm eternally grateful.
Is that where you made your first 60 bottles of wine at Deerfield Ranch?
Yeah, a funny story about that one is at our new winery that we bought, we got burglarized like 2 months ago. They stole 540 bottles of wine, you know, and they're 3 liters, 5 liters, and they're just for charity. We don't sell them. We give them away to raise money for people. And it's pissed me off because it's taken money away from cool organizations. But anyway, they rifled through everything and they left on the floor the last bottle from the first barrel of Kosta Browne. It was sitting right there in the middle of the room because it was a shiner, no label, no nothing. It had no value to them. Whoever them were, we're still trying to figure it out. But it was sitting there and I go, "That's cool. The last bottle from the first barrel, you know." And we just made 24 cases of it, you know. But that was a neat thing. So we still have it. Thank God.
So you and Dan Kosta founded Kosta Browne Winery in 1997.
Yeah, and so a little story behind that. I came back to California in 97 and Dan, and I worked at John Ash prior to this. But I came back and said, "Dude, I need a job like at least 3 days a week. And I can do whatever. And, you know, I'll bartend, wait tables, you know, sommelier, whatever it may be." And he goes, "Right on." He goes, "So why are you back?" I go, "I want to make wine." He goes, "I do too." And I said, "Well, let's do it. What else we got to lose?" And we we set off on it, and we made that barrel of wine we just spoke about, and then we got some investors involved, and we started going commercial with it. And we had a name. We were trying to figure out a brand name, you know. And the original one was Altera. It means the dirt or something, but it sounds like a subdivision, you know. I live in Altera, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm really liking it. And so anyway, some guy calls me one day and he goes, "That's my name." I'm like, "Oh, Dan, we're going to bottle in a month." And so I called Dan Kosta and I said, "Okay, so our role model is William Sellium, right? Because what a wonderful winery. And Burt Williams and Ed Sellium, these guys." And I said, "Well, they use their names. Why don't we use our names?" And Dan's like, "That sounds cool. Well, whose name goes first?" And I said, "I don't really care, but Browne Kosta sounds like a vicious spider out of Thailand. I got bit by the Browne Kosta." So I said, "Kosta Browne has a better feel to it,
Yeah.
you know?" And that's how that whole thing came about. And on that original label, that grape cluster, you know,
Mhm.
I sat down for 2 months and I penciled that thing myself. I drew it because I had no other way to doing it, right? So I sat there and I just penciled that thing out and it stuck. And so that's how we got started. And then the whole thing just took off like a rocket ship.
How did you guys know Pinot Noir was the future?
You know, we didn't know it because it was a very small area of the wine industry. But what we did know is we lived right here in the Russian River Valley, and we were gravitating towards Pinot. And we understood, because being sommeliers, that the highest end wine consumers that we saw that were very savvy, they were searching for more Pinot Noirs. And some like Burgundies and some like California Pinots, but we loved California Pinots. And I looked at Dan and Dan looked at me and I said, "It's in our backyard, man. And this is what we love. And people say it's a heartbreak grape and it's so hard to do."
Mhm.
And I go, "Okay, I'm up for that challenge. Bring it on."
Mhm.
I had no idea what the hell I was doing, you know, and Dan didn't either, right? Well, we put it all together, and then Chris Costello came on board. He was our finance guy and another founder. But anyway, we got into Pinot because we had a passion for it and we loved it. It wasn't about we're going to make $1 million on this deal. It was like, let's just craft something. And one of the conversations I had with Dan was like, "Dude, if we could just find a barn somewhere and we can make 30 barrels and play Rush 2112 and hang out and make a decent living." I'm not saying extravagant. We can just pay our bills. All's good in the world. Let's go for that. And that's where we started. And that's what we went for. And the reason we got into Pinot Noir, and a lot of people said, "Oh, you got to have a Chardonnay and a Zinfandel and a Riesling or whatever." And I'm like, "No, we're Pinot guys." We kind of I've always got against the grain, you know,
Yeah.
always. And it was against the grain. And I liked that about it. It was gritty. It was a sense of doing something that people typically don't do, you know? And I like that about it. And again, like I said, being in our backyard and the Garden of Eden and all this Pinot and all these things. And what we realized, again, as I said before, is a lot of these people were searching out these wines, and there weren't a lot of them. At that point, it was, William Sellian, Dellinger, Gary Farrell, Rocchioli, Morgan, a few of these other brands, but not a lot of them. But I enjoyed them all. They were all brilliant. And I like Cabernet and I like Zinfandel. I like all these other wines. But there was something about Pinot Noir that just thrilled me. It was like, how is this girl showing up to this dance like that? You know, to use an analogy, that's a beautiful thing right there. And how do I get connected with that? And I just dove in head first, man, head first. And I'm still swimming. I'm still treading water.
I was surprised when I was reading about your business plan and your investor funding for the second version ended September 9th, 2001. That was fairly close for comfort. You must have been fairly stressed out when this was happening. Looks like your
Yeah,
funding finalized 2 days before September 11th.
that's an interesting story. So I'm heading up to Lake County to check on our Sauvignon Blanc vineyard. I'm almost to Hopland, and I'm listening to the radio, and I hear the Twin Towers came down. And 2 days prior, we sent out this offering because we needed capital.
Yeah.
We had to pay bills. You know, I had bridge loans going everywhere, this way and that way. And we needed to raise some capital. We threw this business plan out, and then the Twin Towers came down. I go, we are screwed. Not only just our business, but it's like the painfulness of seeing what just happened. Good Lord, man, all these lives, you know. So anyway, we restructured the business plan and prioritized different people in different areas. Very creative, and it wasn't me; it was Chris Costello that did this, and his father Jim Costello, and they're very creative with their business modeling. And we sent it back out, and we managed to get through that first round. We wanted to raise $1 million, but we raised like 290. The next year, it's like, we got to do this again. Barely made it through. Next year, raised it a little bit more. We almost got to $1 million after 3 years because we needed the capital to keep this thing going, right? And we barely made it. And these guys are just throwing their money away. That's how they looked at it. And I go, no, we'll be okay. And our 2000 vintage Pinot, it was like, this is going to be awesome. Well, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, and it got infected with the Brettanomyces. And I had to sit down with my lead investor and say, we can't sell it. I'm like, oh God. And so they almost wrapped the thing up, and I go, no, we're not wrapping it up. We will proceed with what we're doing because this is going to work. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it will work. And then 2005 hits with our 2003 vintage, and the whole thing just blew up in a good way. Mm-hmm. With the Spectator, with the wine blogs, with all these different things. And all of a sudden we got a tiger by the tail. And then it's a whole different phase. Like, how do you manage this situation? And what a trip that was. And, but I'm grateful for it. It was just, a firestorm, man. The thing just took off, and it kept going, and it kept going, and it kept going every year. It got better and better and better. And as far as like media and enthusiastic consumers and things like that. And I'm like, okay, well, it seems to be working, so I'll just keep doing this. It's as simple as that, man. It's like, I'll just keep on doing what I can try to do.
And then that must have changed things in 2009 when you won Wine of the Year in Wine Spectator.
That was a big deal, you know, and we hit the top 100 about 10 times. Yeah, we hit number 7, number 4, number 18, number 12, or whatever it means. And those are all really cool. And I was on the stage a few times with that top 10 thing. And then I'm sitting there at our winery, I'm blending the 2009 Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir. And I go, this is a good one. And it's our Appalachian wine, you know, but it happened to strike a chord. And I'm like, And the top 10, you know, they go for the X factor, which is like pizzazz or whatever. Yeah. They go for price point, and they go for score. And I said, okay, well, I told my staff, I said, if we get number 1 wine in the world, which this might make it, I don't know, who knows? If it gets number 1 wine in the world, you buy the best espresso machine you can find. And they did. They did. And we got that thing, and again, having number 4, number 7, number 11, number 20, you name it, was really cool and very honoring. And I'm grateful for that. When that number 1 wine hit, it blew the thing out of the water. All of a sudden, you're international, and people are like, "What the heck is going on here?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't know. We're making Pinot." But the number 1 wine in the world is it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty big deal, and I'm very honored and humbled by it. And Marvin Shanken, I met up with him one time at one of the wine experience things, and Marvin Shanken came up and he goes, "Michael," and it was right in '09 we sold the business to this outfit. We were still involved, but Marvin Shanken came up and he said, and he's a really wonderful guy. He said, "Michael, that's your win. If the business goes away, it goes away, but nobody will ever take that away from you. That's your win." And it made me think about it. And I was like, and I'm never really self-absorbed or anything like that. But I'm like, that was really cool of him to say that. I hope people like our wine, and I hope this works, or I hope that works. But he goes, "That's yours. Own it."
You've used this strategy to sell your wines direct to consumers effectively.
Yeah. So our model, I mentioned Williams selling me earlier, and all their wines, when we were buying wines, they sold them full retail to their consumers and to restaurants, full retail. And business minded, I'm business mind. I'm like, that's some good margin.
Yeah.
Let's try to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Let's try to go direct to consumer. And how do you do that? And then one of my buddies, his name was John Farrington, and really good friend of mine. And he used to work at Williams selling him, and his parents owned Farrington Vineyard up in Anderson Valley. And he took himself out in a wine tank one day. That was a brutal one. That was a brutal one. But anyway, he said, "Michael, so Bert and Ed, they used to go to all these tastings and just throw it out there and have a sign-up sheet. That's what they did." And I said, "Okay, we'll do that." Dan and I would hit the road, and we would go, "Here's the thing, and here's a list," and we'd send things out. And then it just happened to coincide at the same timing as the movie Sideways, the same timing with the Spectator blowing this thing out of the water, the same timing with the blogs, and people just gravitated towards it. There was some luck involved. There was some strategy involved. But how the whole thing came together, I mean, heck if I know, but we went with it. And then the list started growing and growing and growing. And then I thought, well, it's a scarcity model. If somebody wants 10 cases of wine, ain't gonna happen, man. I might have 2 bottles. And part of the book, it's in there. When people come to the winery, I just did it last week. They come and they go, "Okay, we want to buy some wine." And I said, "We don't have any wine to sell," which is true. But I had 4 bottles of them for each 4 couples. And I said, "Take this tonight and enjoy it." Didn't charge them. Just like, "Thank you for coming," because we've got some sample stuff on the side, But when people come, and we hardly do any tours, very rarely. When people come, and sometimes I'll ask them, "So what are you doing tonight?" "Oh, we're going to this restaurant or that restaurant, or we're going to go on this rental house and sit out in the back porch and look at the sunset or whatever." And I go, "Cool, well, enjoy this tonight or tomorrow morning with your Cheerios or whatever you want to do with it, And when we want to buy some wine, I go, "Yeah, it ain't happening. I want to. Give me a year or 2, right?" And that's the truth. We just don't have the friggin' wine. And then they leave, and then they'll tell that story, right? And there's a method to the madness. But if it's not true, if it's not authentic, it doesn't work. It's like, no, here's the true story, but I want you to have something fun, right? And enjoy the rest of your day.
You founded CIRQ, a family-run estate winery, in 2009.
Yeah, so I did that because I realized eventually I would be out of Kosta Browne, and it was a plan. We were going to sell it. We sold that business 3 times. What else am I going to do with my life? I don't know how to make beef jerky. I don't know how to make chocolate. I got to be in business. But the one thing I do know is how to make wine and sell it. But it takes a long time to build up a wine business. You have to have patience. You can't just come out of the gate and bam, here you go, right? It's not nuts and bolts. It takes time. And so I started this thing, CIRQ, and I said, okay, well, it's got to have meaning to it. And so my circus days, I mentioned earlier, that's why it's called CIRQ. And I'm going to do some branding around it because I love branding. I love the labels. I love all that fun stuff. But it's got to be really good wine, And I got 2 vineyards, had 2 vineyards. And one was called Bootlegger's Hill, it still is. One's called Treehouse, still called Treehouse. But during the transition, they kind of went away a little bit here and there. But that's okay. But I named both vineyards, Treehouse, because there was this stand of trees and we were going to put a treehouse in there and call it Treehouse. And the other one, Bootlegger's Hill, I was talking to my buddy Charlie Chenoweth, his dad, and he goes, that's where the bootleggers used to come over the hill during Prohibition to bring in the wares from Canada and the stuff they would distill in the rivers up in the hills. Bootleggers, And so we called it Bootlegger's Hill. That's where that name came from. But anyway, I knew I needed to start it. I needed to get some legs on it and work it through. And I wanted to have a fine-lined wine, a very detailed, intense wine, but very fine lines, if that makes sense, right? Like it's, wow, that's got presence to it, but it's not goopy or thick or that kind of thing. It has, just good resonance. It's like music. And it's got to sound good. And that's CIRQ. And so we've been working on that for a long time. And my new label, Chev, is a little different, a little more broad in its structure, and also like kind of the regions and things like that. But I got to mention this one thing because it just came to mind. I look at wines in 2 ways: colors and sound. If you shut your eyes and you taste a wine, you can see colors. And I'll ask people when they come to the winery, I'll say, okay, shut your eyes and put this on your palate. And what color do you see? And they put it on their palate and they're like, I see blue, or I see purple, or I see crimson. Yes, right? And then I turn it around the other direction and I say, shut your ears, everybody be quiet. Put the same wine in your palate and keep your eyes open if you want. What sound do you hear? Is it bass? Is it mid-tone? Is it high tone? Or is it all the above? And they go, I'm getting some bassy sound. I can feel a little bit of a harmonica, And so that's how I look at it. Because you can see without your eyes, you can hear without your ears. Your palate can translate all those different things. And that's what we're trying to do. So when you have a sensory experience, it takes time to build a wine business up, like any other business, but the wine business, you got to grow the grapes, you got to ferment them, you have to age them, you have to put capital in to kind of get through the times, right? And it just takes time. And so I said, I know I'm going to be out of Kosta Browne eventually. I don't know when, but I'm going to start this thing because I know it's going to take some time. And then I said, well, what's the brand? Well, CIRQ. Back to my circus days, which I mentioned earlier in our conversation, and that meant a lot to me. And so we did that, and the branding and labeling I really enjoy. Every year the back label changes. No one wine will have the same back label ever. That takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Either circus tickets or circus posters or something like that. Not trying to be too gimmicky. It's just check this out, right? So yeah. And then Chev is more of a 1940s LA car scene,
Okay.
like people making stuff out of raw metal into a really cool car.
Oh.
That's kind of where that comes from, because I like that kind of thing. But yeah, so you got to evolve, and you got to shuck and jive, and you got to kind of do your thing. And so CIRQ, yeah, it's been a really wonderful experience. And now we have our own winery, my wife and I. We have a wonderful staff. And it was funny, I asked my COO, who's been working with me for 3 years. He left his job, and I've known him for many years. And I said, okay, Michael, so I've got no money because it's tied up in my business. I have no vineyards. I have no winery, no staff. And I don't know and I got no facility, no nothing. I said, you want to be my lead guy? He says, absolutely. And he's still with me. And we built this thing up, and now we've got a wonderful staff and very dedicated. I don't know how that happened, but really wonderful people. And just a staff of 7. It's not a big staff. But we're just dedicated to, first of all, trying to make the best wine we can, branding it in a certain way that might connect with somebody, because that's what it's about with branding, in my opinion. And then delivering it in a way that is respectful to the consumer. You want to make sure it gets there in the right way.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, we'll take care of it, But all those different moving pieces, and then hospitality and things like that. And again, we don't have an open tasting room or nothing. It's just every once in a while we'll have people out. But you have to have a certain aspect of entertainment.
Yeah.
When people go to a winery or a restaurant or a theater or you name it, they want to go kind of take a little time out of their lives to enjoy and to be slightly entertained, not over the top, unless you go to Cirque du Soleil. But that's all we try to do. We try to tell good stories and have fun. And hopefully people like the wine. You kind of dose it in there, here and there. And it could lead to a conversation about wine. It could lead to a conversation about something completely different. The conversation, in my opinion, is the key.
In fact, that's one of the things I loved about the book, is you had so much detail from someone who's experienced, that I felt like I was getting the true story of how this works and how in the Pinot business, how things go. Because you go to some of these places and people are telling the story, they don't understand it, they don't really know the truth. With you, I felt like that was the truth. It was the correct story. And when I got done, I understood how it's made and how you produced what you did.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, like I said, it took me a long time to pull the trigger on the end on that book as far as getting it out there. And there's some personal stuff in there. I didn't tell all my personal stories, but you got to be vulnerable and you got to kind of let it out there. And the response I've been getting is like, wow, that was very refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, understand that aspect of it. I was just a scared little boy going,
yeah,
I hope you like it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I sure do.
But the response I've gotten has been very positive and cool. And I'm like, now I feel good about letting it out,
Well, you were an Amazon bestseller award for this.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
You know, I don't really know too much about how the book world works,
Okay.
but the book company I work with, Scribe Media,
Okay.
they said, here's how we're going to do it. And I mainly just wanted to write this book for my kids, to be quite honest with you, because I wish I had a book that was written by my great grandfather, for example, you know. So I said, I'm going to do this. And they said, Michael, this is a good story. If you do these certain things, or we can help you do these certain things, we're going to hit Amazon bestseller. And I go, well, what does that exactly mean? They go, well, it's Amazon bestseller. I'm like, well, how do you get there? They're like, follow our lead.
Yeah.
And I did, and they did certain things and promoted, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, #1 Amazon bestseller. Like, you have to be kidding me, right? And I don't really actually today, I don't know what that really means. But it's a nice accolade. Let me put it that way.
It is.
Right? It's a nice accolade. And so I don't know. I'm just rolling with the tide, man. Right? That's all you can do.
So this book was produced as an audiobook also, narrated by William Shatner. How did that come about?
That's a fun one right there. So first of all, I'll preface this by saying I grew up with my dad, and we would every week we'd watch the old Star Trek. My dad's a science fiction buff, and I love that show, and Spock and Captain Kirk and Scotty and all the people, I just love it. And so the book company said, Michael, you have to have an audio book. I go, well, when am I going to read it? And she says, you're not. You're going to hire a narrator. We've got 7 of them down in LA, and we're going to send you their kind of things, and you pick your flavor, right? And I go, okay. And I'm still trying to figure this thing out. I don't know how to do this, And then I go home that night, and I'm in bed at midnight, and I'm thinking about this, going, there's only 2 people that I want to narrate this book: Morgan Freeman or William Shatner, because they've got the voice, they know how to tell stories, so to speak. Morgan Freeman, I could have got to maybe, but I got a loose connection, but that would have taken some time. But one of my buddies down in LA, this guy's name is Mike Horn. He runs a radio company called CRN Radio. Wonderful, wonderful radio station. I mean, you can go up and down on all these different shows he's got. And he's just a cool dude, But he's really good buddies with William Shatner. So I called him one day, a couple months ago, and I said, hey, so I got this book and I got the audio thing going. And you think William Shatner would narrate it? He goes, I don't know. Send me the manuscript, I'll send it to Bill. I go, okay. A week later, I'm on the phone with Captain Kirk. Mr. Shatner, he goes, Michael, you know how he talks, right? He says, Michael, I love the manuscript, and I would love to do this tomorrow in the studio. But your book has a lower tone to it, so I'm going to lower my tone. That's how he said it. And I go, Mr. Shatner, however you want to hit this up. And he spent 7 hours in the studio, and they scrubbed it down to like 3.5 hours, or however they do that. I don't really know. But it was really funny. I was sitting there with my wife, and we got 3 kids and 2 dogs and a guinea pig and fish, and we got a zoo at our freaking house, And I said, honey, you got to listen to this chapter. It was chapter 6, I believe. It was like 30 minutes long or something. And I said, you got to listen to this. When I first got it, before it was actually really scrubbed down, 5 minutes in, because she's still looking at the kids and stuff, and where's the dogs? And then she looks at me and she goes, how is he talking like you? How is he telling the story like you're telling it? And I looked back at her because she was kind of dumbfounded. And I was too when I first heard it. I'm like, this guy nailed it. And I said, honey, you have to realize that he used to run the Starship Enterprise. He would hit warp speed and he would nail it. And he would be beamed up by Scotty and stuff like that. And so it's kind of a sidebar, kind of a funny story. But she was like, her eyes were like deer in the headlights going, how is he doing this thing? You know, there's different aspects. People love to pick up a hardback, or people love audio or whatever it may be. But I really encourage people to hit that audio book because, man, and he actually interjected a couple of small parts throughout the story and interjected some things to add to the story. I don't have a specific example. The really cool thing is I told him about our story with my dad, you know, and his assistant calls me and says, Bill wants to send your dad a signed photograph. And I said, that would be great.
Yeah.
And so they set one up and it was with his yellow uniform back in the day. And I had the thing framed and everything, and it's signed to my dad. And I gave it to him, and my dad was elated. It was such a cool thing. And what a sweet thing to do, you know, for him to, first of all, to read my book, and then secondly, to send my dad that thing. And yeah, I mean, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
You never know what's going to come around the curve.
I'm going to mention here that there'll be an audio sample for this book that we'll put in the comments. If people want to listen to it and decide if they want to buy the book, they can go ahead and purchase it after sampling.
Great, yeah, perfect. And the audiobook's like $15. It's not a big deal. It's on Amazon, but it's a fun listen. And if people want a book, have them email me. They don't have to buy a hardcover. And I got quite a few of them. I'm just saying, if you got a few people, I can't send out 1,000, right? But if you got a few people that want to sign one, because it's hard to sign books when people order them on Amazon.
Yeah.
But if people want something like that, I'd be glad to sign one and just ship one off, just a few.
Is there any passages from your book you would like to read and share with us?
Part of chapter 1, but it's this paragraph is titled "Playing with Fire." My dad and I were into muzzleloader rifles and guns. We attended primitive rendezvous where people wore buckskins, hung out in teepees, and rode horses. Very cool for a kid. And it was very cool. I loved sleeping in teepees. It was really neat. Fireplace in the middle and things like that. There were shooting competitions at these rendezvous. My dad had cut down a 50 caliber rifle for me, and I used it in children's competitions. He always instructed me to use no more than 50 grains of gunpowder, black powder. 50 grains is about a medium measurement of powder, and I could get a good 35-yard shot with it. The memory of this one shooting competition is still vivid in my mind, and it truly is vivid in my mind. I had a special powder horn that my dad had made for me, which I still have to this day. It's a cow horn with an intricate scrimshaw of an eagle on it. It's a beautiful thing. It had a tiny point in the end that would open up the powder measuring device and measure the quantity. I measured 50 grains. Then my young mind thought, if 50 grains is good, wouldn't 150 be better? I had experimented with about 75 to 100 grains before, so why not increase that amount? This is an idiot kid thinking. You know? My dad had warned me that too much powder could blow up the gun, but I wanted to see what would happen with 150 grains. In the third round of the competition, because all the kids would sit up and you'd shoot like 25 yards, 50 yards, 100 yards, things like that. And you had targets out there, and it's all well measured and safe and stuff. I loaded 150 grains into my rifle. The sound was deafening. Everyone was looking around trying to find the source of the explosion.
All they saw was a cloud of smoke and no one was there. Because it blew me back off my feet. And it threw me over. It knocked me down. My dad came over, looked at me and said, I told you, only 50 grains. Don't ever do that again. Now you can see what happened. You got lucky. And then I'll wrap it up with this. Not sure what I learned from that, because I made more dumb mistakes with things that explode. Anyway, there's more to the whole story, but I can keep reading, but we only have limited time here. But there's all kinds of these stupid stories I did as a kid. But I wrote those down because it taught me lessons of what not to do.
Yeah.
And then some of them, it taught me lessons about what to do.
Mhm.
And I think those are two very important parts of life, in my opinion. You know, you gotta risk, you gotta make failures, you gotta do these things, and then you have to accept the fact that you did something right. And there are different aspects of thinking. Wow, I accomplished that. That was cool. And I really screwed this up. That sucked, right? But if you could put them together in a manner, and this is just my thinking, you know, just my point of view, you put them together in a manner that actually works. And the end of the day, you can, again, kiss your wife or your life partner, hug your kids, and hug yourself, more importantly, right? Self-compassion and going, you're okay. Because then you can express that to your loved ones and your friends. And that's what I focus on, you know. Making wine and growing grapes is a side story. Something I take very seriously, very seriously. But the thing I take most seriously in my life is loving my friends and family and doing the best I can just to be there, you know. And if somebody puts their hand out, I need help, I'll do my best, but I'm not going to force it on you, right? It's just that's what I'm focusing on.
Okay.
And then my side thing is I love to be in the vineyards. I love to smell the wine. I love to ferment things. And I love working with other people that have the same focus. And that's very important to me as well. So that's about on that topic.
Will you be making any upcoming future books?
I wouldn't mind having a book eventually down the road, just about a bunch of other stories, because I'm a storyteller. I got a lot of them. This is just a few, you know, but I would like to write a book or be a part of something that I tell just stories. It's a storytelling book.
Yeah.
And they're all true. There's nothing made up. It's not fiction. It's real stuff. And I got so many of them, but I got to write the stories down first, make sure, but they kind of come and go in my brain, but I don't have a journal. I do have a journal. And if people enjoy it, that's cool. But I just want to get it down because all these different, I got a ton of stories. And that would be fun. Other than that, I don't know. I'm not a book writer.
Yeah.
I'm not an author. This just happened to be. But it's a good thing. And I think to encourage people to write their story down. And it could be in a journal and they share it with their family or whatever. If they want to put a book out, cool, you know, whatever you want to do. But it's good to get things on, you know, put pen to paper.
So is that the advice you would give to new writers, is put the pen to paper and just get it accomplished?
Yes, absolutely. And for me, I didn't know how to do that. You know, I have all these thoughts, but to put the pen to the paper for me, I'm a horrible student.
I'm a horrible, like, do that sort of responsibility.
Mhm.
So I found somebody to help me with it. And this great writer, and we sat down for 4 years and went through this thing, and he took what I said and then put it in there. But then I scrubbed the whole thing out word by word. It was a painstaking process. But if people want to write something down, I totally encourage it. And again, whether it's in a journal or whether it's in a book or whatever it is, it's really good to get pen to paper. It lets your mind kind of let things go. And I think it's really cool. And another thing I think is really cool is so many people have such an interesting story that they don't tell other people about. There's got to be something really interesting about that. And when you read something, and I love autobiographies, I just love them. It's very fascinating to me, and philosophy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I encourage people to do it. It's not an easy task. I'll tell you that much. For me, it wasn't. For some people, maybe it is. I don't know. But for me, I'm like, oh God, this is a brutal experience. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I did it, and it's been a fun adventure. And but the main thing for me, I got to say, is that it lifted a weight off my shoulders. You got to find somebody to help. I had no idea people would enjoy it, and that wasn't my intent. My intent was just to go, hey kids, here's my story. You know what I mean? I swear to God. But other people are enjoying it, and I appreciate that, and it's cool. It's humbling. I'm super grateful that I have the family I have. I'm super grateful for our staff, and they're so intuitive and motivated and just going for it. And I sit back and watch, and I'm blown away at the talent and what these people bring. And in any business, people, your employees, your staff, your teammates, they spend the most of their time at work. And to watch people smile and to watch people go, I'm on it, and to see people just going for it. I mean, that inspires me in a huge way. Thank you very much for having me.